Hello there, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program New Zealand Reborn. Joining me in the tracking station, because although we have started colonizing the Mun, we do currently still lack science points, and there's not many more that we can still get from the Mun. So we're going to go ahead and launch a comprehensive mission to Duna, something that we have not done for quite some time now, I don't think. It's been a very long time since we've been to Duna. So this mission, spending a bit of science points here in the tech tree. Anyway, yeah, so this mission here is actually going to launch 3 probes into a high orbit of Duna, a low orbit of Duna, and a lander that's going to land on the surface and hopefully get us a lot of science that we can then use to further develop our capabilities to launch modules to the base that we have on the Mun, New Auckland. One of these probes is a payload for a contractor that we need to launch into a specific orbit high over Duna. But the main propulsion stage of this rocket is going to be more than capable of doing that. So, without further ado, off to Duna finally once again. Well, the folks at Mission Control are probably calling that the most successful interplanetary mission that the New Zealand Space Agency has ever launched yet to date. We got over 1,600 science from that, and so with those, we pick up heavy aerodynamics, short term habitation, and composite materials, which allows us to build our next module of the base, which is going to be launched on this monstrosity here. Which is essentially a giant tuna can strapped to an old Soviet era looking booster stage, I think. It'll be more than capable of putting us up there, but we don't plan on using this rocket very much. I think we're just calling it the Albert 1 um, because it's ugly and I don't like it. No offense to anybody named Albert out there. But the 12 mainsail engines ignite, and the Albert rocket, with the next module of New Auckland, launches into the heavens in the darkness so that nobody can see it very clearly because we don't want the international press to publicize on how ugly this rocket is. I tried my best with the parts that were available. We don't quite have the technology to make tanks that are the full width of that fairing there, but we do what we can. So the module itself there is a lab module, though I did realize later that that particular one, the large one, the 3.75-meter diameter lab that comes with the station parts expansion, for some reason, Kerbalism does not work with it in terms of science, so we can't put experiments into this um, module here. So basically, this is just acting as um, a branch section of the base. So we're going to attach it right here, and it'll be a nice little piece that we can use to have Kerbals come in and out with the two airlocks on the side there. But back in the mission control, we need to accept some new contracts, and the Arkenstone 1 mission to Dres some time ago obviously ended in a big failure, probably the most horrendous unmanned failure currently in the space agency. We want to try that again. So, judging on how successful the Duna Explorer mission was, we are going to copy that design more or less, this time using nuclear power instead of solar mostly. Um, we're going to copy that design and hopefully get a ton of science from the planet of Dres in between the orbits of Duna and Jool. So putting this on top of a Callahan booster, there is Arkenstone 2, 3, and 4 going on board this one. They all have the full complement of science experiments on board. And I think it'll take just under 2 years or just over 2 years to get there fully. The Callahan booster, of course, is a very tested spacecraft. I think it's our most launched launch vehicle currently. So, yeah, it's very expensive also. So you might notice that our funds are starting to dwindle a little bit by the end of the video here. I think they dip below 3 million, but that's sort of a financial thing that we're gonna have to deal with later because uh, I like launching stuff, doing all the little getting money missions. It's not something that I find super exciting a lot. While we wait on that mission, though, we have other matters to attend to, like launching more modules for New Auckland. So this fourth module for New Auckland is the first of the hydroponics section, which will allow them, of course, to grow food on the surface of the Mun. This is going to go right off the end off of that last branch module that we launched, and hopefully these two are going to be enough to feed them on the Mun for some time. To be honest, we already launched enough supplies on each on this mission to last them about 10 years. And with future missions, we can honestly, we don't need to grow food because we can bring along enough for decades. Surprisingly, Kerbals apparently don't eat nearly as much as humans do because their supplies last super long. But yeah, so we're deploying this module with the classic tilt deployment that we use for our rovers and stuff, and sticking it on the end there of the base, starting to grow, certainly. We need to increase the living room of all the astronauts on board here, because more living space means they are more comfortable, which means less stress, which means less problems, and they can stay on the surface of the Mun longer. All right, so the next thing that we're launching is the Lunar Recycler vehicle. And this one, you may have noticed that there are a lot of different, mostly wheels, but there's a lot of debris around the base. And above all else, that creates a lot of lag. So this rover here is designed to, it's got a crane on it and it's got a recycling bin on the back. So it will hopefully pick up all the debris around the base, shove it into the recycler bin, and change it into scrap metal, which we can then reconstitute back into rocket parts to construct stuff on the surface of the Mun. Of course, we have yet to launch that ISRU module onto the base, but we will get on top of that soon. So the rover here, deploying it caused a fair amount of Kraken attacks. The Kraken appears to have taken a very good liking to our Mun base. But after this last deployment, I think I went to the tracking station or something, and then I came back and the deployment stage was completely gone. So, I mean, I guess it worked out in that case. So yeah, you see there, it's completely gone, which, I'm not going to complain. So we drive the rover all the way over to the Mun base and start cleaning up a lot of the stuff around here. Improving the technology, of course, backing into these wheels here to put them in the recycler bin and break them down. We have to be very careful when we are cleaning up around the base, in very close proximity to the base, because if we hit the base with our recycler, I'm pretty sure that means that it's going to try to recycle New Auckland, and we really don't want that to happen. Though on a far less lighthearted note, colonizing the great frontier of space is not a task for the faint of heart. Our astronaut engineer, Sophia Adams, goes on board the Lunar Recycler vehicle, attempting to do some routine work on it, and experiences a rapid depressurization event. During the depressurization, the hatch of the rover is stuck closed, and she is doomed to suffocate inside the rover without any help. Oliver Nicholas is unable to retrieve her, and she is lost in the line of duty. Nation mourns the loss of its first astronaut since 9 years ago. Valentina Yuliana lost her life in an accident on Kerbin. But as they say, the show must go on. These two astronauts gave their lives in pursuit of exploring the unknown, and so we'll be damned if we stop now. Launching the next module to the New Auckland colony is a fairly routine venture, although crude applications of this technology have currently been put on hold to be further examined and ensured for safety. It appears that the hatch malfunction that led to the death of Sophia Adams was a malfunction in the arm, which caused a breach in the hull, which caused the depressurization. So this new module is another hydroponics, basically a direct copy of the one on the other side there, and docking it on the other port just to finish that sort of branching pattern there. Um, Moving on to a couple other things. So we do have this contract to give a couple investors a tour of the Space Center, and in return, this will allow us to build a space hotel and eventually a space casino. Um, that technology is going to be quite expensive to put in orbit, so it'll be a little bit of a something for a later time. But we bring them around the tracking station here, explaining to them all of the different things we go through to make missions happen, all of the various probes that we are tracking at the tracking station, and then eventually bringing them to the launch pad to watch the rollout of a rocket which is the culmination of several years of cutting edge research, the Castle 1. Standing taller than any rocket ever before, and with a diameter of 8.4 meters, the Castle 1 rocket is powered by 18 mainsail engines on the first stage and 8 Hydrolox vacuum engines on the second stage for incredible performance, capable of lifting massive payloads into Kerbin orbit and beyond. This monstrosity is the largest rocket ever produced by far, and we are prepared to use it to grow our Mun presence. The sixth module of New Auckland here, certainly growing the base into more of a proper colony, is going to serve as the nexus point for all future habitation additions. It holds a lot of life support systems. And here we move to Tumuaki 2, our mission that has been on its way to Jewel for, I think, almost 3 years there. And we are getting into our encounter with Lathe to create a gravity assist to put it into orbit around Jewel, but one of our contracts calls for us to actually orbit Lathe, so we're not actually just going to use it for a gravity assist. We're going to fully orbit around it into a full low orbit here, though later on we will decide to not spend all of the delta V necessary to get it into an orbit like that. Zooming in past Jewel here. Very beautiful planet, especially with the graphics mods we have here, all the light-colored clouds above the green. And we begin our 10-minute burn with the nuclear engine. Obviously, with nuclear engines, like ion engines, their thrust-to-weight ratio is pretty terrible, but, eventually we get it to where we need it to be. So this mission, we can't really do a full mission montage like I usually would put together because it's far enough away that our communications are pretty thin, so we can't transport data very fast as it is. So we're going to need to spend a lot of time in orbit of each moon here, but it is what it is. The last order of business in today's episode involves transferring the crew of Edoras Station, not really because the supplies are running short, but more because of the radiation exposure limits. The crew of Edoras Station is getting a little bit irradiated, getting a bit cooked there. So we're sending up a crew of some brand new, newly hired astronauts, including Antony Kazmarzik, who is hired from Poland as part of the Pacific Union, and Jean Seeley, who is from South Africa. Those two will be joining our crew of Trace Weber Jr. and Edward Medhurst in the new Crew 2 expedition to Edoras Station. Finally, Jeb, Bill, Austin, and Petrov finally get to head home after some time in space. I don't know exactly how long they've been there, but they've been there a while, and they're all heavily irradiated, so they need to get back to Kerbin in one piece, ready to take some radiation treatments to make sure they're alive and well for their next missions, because certainly we're going to need Jeb to pilot some of our next upcoming things here, getting us ready for the next stage of colonizing the Mun and potentially beyond.